Hello and welcome, friends. Yesterday we had a discussion on finding out the logarithm of a number, and we had discussed the characteristic. There was some kind of a technical issue yesterday, and because of which I could not complete the session. So I am going to start from the very point at which we ended our discussion yesterday. If you would recall, we had had a discussion about finding the characteristic. We understood that characteristic is basically a integer. So characteristic is basically integer. It is basically a whole number, so it could be -3, -4, -5, -2, -1, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. And basically it is determined by the position of a decimal point, and we had discussed the ways of calculating the characteristic. In case the number is greater than 1, of which we have to find out the logarithm, the characteristic is going to be positive. If it is less than 1, it is going to be negative. And how do we find the value of the characteristic? If it is greater than 1, 1 less than the numbers before the decimal, that is going to be the characteristic, the value of the characteristic. 1 less than the numbers, so you'll have to calculate the numbers before the decimal, and then you have to deduct 1, subtract 1, and the number that you get will be the characteristic. In case of a negative characteristic, when the number of which we are trying to find the characteristic is basically less than 1, the negative characteristic would be calculated in this particular manner. You will have to calculate the number of zeros between the decimal and the first non-zero digit, and then you'll have to add 1 to it. So that would be the characteristic, and the sign would be negative, right? We had taken up some examples, I remember, and probably okay, I'll discuss 1 or 2 more examples. I'll repeat the discussion on these examples. So this is 43.07, a positive number is greater than 1, so characteristic is going to be positive for sure, and we'll be using this particular rule. So the characteristic, the value would be 1 less than the number of numbers before the decimal. So there are 2 numbers, 2 digits basically before the decimal. So 2 minus 1, 1 less, since we are saying 1 less than the numbers before the decimal, so 2 minus 1 becomes 1, and that is why it becomes plus 1. The characteristic is plus 1. It has been shown here as 1 because we don't need to specify the plus sign. In case it's a negative sign, then we'll have to mention it. If you don't mention anything, it is assumed to be positive, so that's why it has been given as 1. Now, this one is 4.307. The number is greater than 1, and so the characteristic is going to be positive. However, since we have to since the total number of digits before decimal is 1, there is just 1 4, so basically the number of digits before the decimal, this is 1. So deducting 1 would give us 0, so the characteristic would be 0 here, right? I think just to ensure that this confusion is not there, I should rather, instead of writing the numbers x, the numbers here, I should mention digits. Otherwise you might get a little confused whenever you are reading this. So I am doing what? I am making this slight change. So now it would hopefully be here it was fine, I think. So basically, whenever there is a number which is greater than 1, you now understand that the characteristic has got to be positive. If the number is less than 1, the characteristic has got to be negative, right? Okay, I think let me do it this way. This one is okay. So now that we have discussed the case of those numbers which are greater than 1, let us move to those numbers which are less than 1. So the first example which you can see here is 0.4307, right? So 0.4307 is a number which is less than 1, you understand? So the characteristic has got to be negative, which means the characteristic will have a minus sign. And what would be the value of the characteristic? It would be one more than the number of zeros between decimal and first non-zero digit. Now have a look at point 4307. How many zeros are there between decimal and the first non-zero digit? Non-zero digit would mean 1, 2, 3, 4 up till 9. So you see that the first digit which is there, that is 4, or basically non-zero digit, which means that there are no zeros between decimal and the first non-zero digit. In other words, there is zero number of zeros between decimal and first non-zero digit. So to find out the value of characteristic, what will I do? I'll add 1 to this 0. So if you add 1 to this 0, it basically becomes 1, right? So the characteristic in this particular case would be how much? The characteristic in this particular case would be minus 1. Do you want me to repeat this? I'm repeating this. See, the number is less than 1, which means the characteristic has got to be negative, so you see the minus sign here. And how many zeros are there between decimal, this is the decimal, and the first non-zero digit? There is no 0 or 0 zeros. So number of zeros is 0. So since you have to add 1 to the number of zeros, so zeros, how many zeros are there? Only 0, no 0 or 0, 0. So I'll be adding 1 to this, and this will become 1, and so the characteristic now would be 1. However, since the characteristic has got to be negative, it would be basically minus 1, right? This is okay. Now have a look at this example. Now here you understand it is less than 0, so less than 1, so it has got to be negative, so that is fine. And number of zeros between the decimal and the first non-zero digit, there is just 1 0, and 1 plus 1 is 2, so the characteristic is minus 2, right? Okay, likewise the case here, it is got to be minus because it is less than 1, and see, there are 3 zeros between decimal and the first non-zero digit, which means the characteristic would be 3 plus 1 is equal to 4, and minus would come because this number is less than 1. Since this is less than 1, the sign would be minus, and likewise here, have a look, sign would be minus, that is perfectly fine. And if you look at the number of zeros between decimal and the first non-zero digit, you'll find there are 4 zeros, so it would be 4 plus 1 is 5, and there would be a minus sign because it is less than 1, so the characteristic is going to be minus 5. It should be kept in your mind, you should keep this in your mind, that at times instead of using the minus sign, we use the bar. So the negative characteristic is usually written as 1 bar, 2 bar, 4 bar, 5 bar, etc. Right? This is nothing but 1 bar is same as minus 1, 2 bar is same as minus 2. This is okay. Now this was the first part, that was basically finding out the characteristic when you are when you are trying to find out the logarithm of a number. So the first thing that you have to do is basically find out the characteristic. So that we have done. Now let's have a look at the mantissa. How do I find out the mantissa? Before that, we should understand what mantissa is. The fractional part which is expressed in the decimal form, this is called the mantissa. Now please understand, when you write a number in its logarithmic form, when you write the log of a number, the fractional part which you use is the decimal, is the mantissa, and it is expressed in decimals. And the part that you mentioned before the decimal is the characteristic. So we have understood how to find out the characteristic. We are now going to discuss how to find the mantissa. Please understand that mantissa is always going to be positive. Remember that characteristic could be positive also, it could be negative also, but that is not the case with mantissa. Mantissa is always going to be positive. And to find out the mantissa, we'll have to make use of the logarithm table. Now these table would be they would be provided to you at the end of your book in the annexure section, and basically these are the tables which are used to find out the mantissa. And so whenever you are finding the logarithm of a number, you have to find out the mantissa. So for that you will be using this particular table, and as far as the characteristic, we know how to calculate the characteristic. So this table is basically used to calculate the mantissa. and we'll understand how this particular table is going to be used. So we'll take up an example, right? So once you have found out the characteristic, we understood how to do that in the last slide, and once you find the mantissa, then you club them up, and this is how you'll get the logarithm of a number. We'll take up examples to make you understand things better. Now this is the logarithm table. Now let us say we have to find out the log of 2,78,600. Now basically we want to convert it into its logarithm form. First thing, where is the decimal? First let us talk about the characteristic. In the examples that I'll be taking, the characteristic is basically shown in red color. So you can understand that 5 has got to be the characteristic, but how do we calculate the characteristic here? See, there are 6 numbers, 6 digits before the decimal. There is no decimal, which means the decimal has got to be here. So basically it is 278,600.00. So the decimal is here, and there are 6 digits before the decimal. Now to find the characteristic, you have to do what? You have to deduct 1 from this particular number. So 6 minus 1 is 5. So this is the characteristic. Is this okay? Now how do we find out the mantissa? For mantissa, what you have to do is basically you have to look at the first 4 digits here. See, 2786. And now you'll have to go to the logarithm table. Here you will find out the mantissa. So 2786, if we have been given, you look at the first 2 digits and go to the first column and go to the row which has 27 mentioned here. Then what is the third digit? 8, and the fourth digit is 6. So what do? You go to this column, move in this horizontal row, and you have to basically look for the value under 8. Since the third digit is 8, so you have to look for the value under 8 in this particular row, right? So in this particular row, you know that it is 4440, fine. And since we have also been given 6, so 6, for the value you will have to look for the mean difference, right? So what I'll do, when I have to find out the mantissa for 2786, I look at 27, and then I look at 8 under 8 column, and then I look at under the 6 column. So I have circled the 2 values, and then what I'll do, I'll add them up. 4440 plus 9 becomes 4449, and that is what I mentioned here after the decimal. Is this okay? This is how I find the mantissa, and this now gives me my log value for 278600. Is this okay? So let me repeat that you only have to worry about the first 4 digits. The first 2 digits will tell you which particular row to look at, and the third and the fourth digits will tell you which particular column and which particular mean difference to look at. Is this fine? And this way you will get 4449. And since the characteristic already you have written it here 5, the log value would be 5.4449. Now let me give you a slightly different example. 278644. Now I have mentioned here that the answer here, the logarithm value of even 278644 is same as that for 278600. How is this possible? This is possible because when you are calculating the logarithm, you are only concerned with the first 4 digits. See, you are not concerned with what is happening after the 4th digit. You are only concerned with the first 4 digit when you are finding the mantissa from this table. Here also the first 4 digits are 2786. And how many digits are there before the decimal? There are 6 digits. So we have mentioned the characteristic here. But to find the mantissa, again we have to look for these 4 digits only, 2786. So whether it is 278600 or 278644 or 278622 or 33, it is not going to make any difference. The 5th and the 6th digits are not going to make any difference. And similarly for the 7th and the 8th digit also. So you only have to worry about the first 4 digits, hence the answer is 5.449. Basically what it means is that when you are finding the logarithm of a particular number, you are basically doing what? You are making the calculations easier for you, convenient for you, but you are sacrificing a little bit of accuracy in return. How? Because see, for the number 278600 and 278644, the logarithm was the same, though these numbers were very different. And if you look at 278699 also, you would find the logarithm would still be the same, though there's a significant difference between 278600 and 278699. Still the logarithms would be the same, which means I've been able to reduce this large number into a one digit number, or let's say 5.44, small number to remember. However, I have lost a little bit of accuracy. So be it 278600 or 278601 or 278698, 278699, the log of all these numbers is going to be the same. So this is what I have sacrificed. I have sacrificed accuracy and I have gained convenience in return, right? Now this was the reason I actually took up this example. Now let me take up another example. Now here you understand how many digits before the decimal is got to be here. So basically 4 digits, 4 minus 1, 3. So this is the characteristic. Since this number is greater than 1, you have to do what? You have to find out the digits before the decimal. The decimal is here. So 4 digits before decimal, so 4 minus 1 becomes 4 minus 1 is equal to 3. So basically 3 is the characteristic, positive 3. And then again look for 8 of 27 here using this logarithm table, and then add the mean difference under the 6th column, right? And this is how you'll get the answer 3.4449. So you see the difference basically is not because of this, it is only because of the number of digits before the decimal. See, 2786 always going to give you the same value, 4449, 4449, 44. The difference is in the characteristic, and the difference is because of the number of digits before the decimal. For example, in this case, number of digits before the decimal is 2, which means 2 minus 1, 1. Why we are doing this? Why we are deducting 1? Because this number is greater than 1. So in such cases, when you have to find the characteristic, you have to basically deduct 1. So you have to calculate the number of digits before decimal, and then you have to reduce it by 1. So that would be the characteristic value. So 2 minus 1 gives me 1. And since again 2786, the 4 digits, the mantissa part would remain the same. So 1.4449. Now have a look at 2.786. How many digits before the decimal? Only 1. 1 minus 1 becomes 0. And then again look at 2786. 8 of 27 and 6 of 27. So you have to look at it, and the answer still would be 0.4449. So basically there's no difference in the mantissa, because we were always looking at 8 of 27 and 6 of 27. The difference is in the characteristic, and the characteristic would basically depend on the number of digits which are there before the decimal, right? Now have a look at this one. Now this is a special case wherein we are going to talk about the negative characteristics. Now have a look at this particular number. Since it is less than 1, 0.2786, the characteristic has got to be negative. And I told you that instead of negative, I can also show it using the bar. So this is now 1 bar. And since the value of 8 of 27 and the 6 of 27 is still the same, like I mentioned here and here, so the mantissa would remain the same. 1 bar 0.449, 4449. This is okay. 1 bar or minus 1.4449. So this is the logarithm of this particular number. Let's have one more example. Now in this case, how many? Now this is less than 1, so the characteristic has got to be negative, and see the bar has been shown here, which shows that the characteristic is negative. And how many? What would be the value of characteristic? I said the number of zeros between the decimal and the non-zero digit. First non-zero digit was 2 and decimal was here, so there are basically 2 zeros in between. So you'll have to add 1 to this number, so 2 plus 1 becomes 3, and since it is less than 1, it becomes 3 minus or 3 bar 0.4449, right? Here it was 1.4449 because number of 0 between this decimal and the first non-zero digit 2, there was no 0, which, or you can say in other words, 0 zeros. So there was 0 number of zeros, so 0 plus 1 becomes 1, and since it is less than 1, the sign would be negative or bar. So bar 1.4449 or minus 1.4449. Then have a look at this particular value log 0.015, a slightly different example so that you are able to understand the concept better. Now have a look at the first thing that we are going to do is we have to find out the characteristic. Less than 1, so it has got to be negative, so you see the bar here, and then number of zeros is 1 between decimal and the first non-zero digit. 1 plus 1 becomes 2, hence 2 here. So now I have found out the characteristic is minus 2. However, I have to find out the mantissa. Now look at the digits here. 0 0 we cannot do anything. Yes, then we are with 1 5, and if this is a decimal we can assume that 1 5 can be further extended to mean 150000 and so on and so forth. So now basically what we have to do is you have to find out 0 of 15 and 0 of 15, the mean difference. Have a look at this. Basically 0.015 is now equal to 0.015 and then 0 and then 0 and then 0 and so on. Because the decimal is here, we can add these zeros. So basically now we have to look at these 4 digits, which means you have to look at 0 of 15 and then add the mean difference under 0 in the same row. So 15 is here, 0 of 15 is 1761, right? And then we have to add the value under the mean difference 0. There is no mean difference under 0. There is no mean difference for 0, which means that we can skip or simply understand it as 0. So basically what we get is 1761. So we have got 1761. This is the mantissa part, right? So I know that it might be a little confusing for you in the beginning, but then if you practice it on a regular basis, you would find it easier. Tomorrow we will be discussing the anti-logarithms and finding the anti-logarithms of a number. Once you are able to do this, you can practice logarithms and anti-logarithms. You find the logarithm of a number, and then if you find the anti-logarithm of the log, then you will get the number back. So if you are getting the same number with which you started, then probably both the logarithm and the anti-logarithm both of them were okay. So this is how you'll keep on practicing your questions on your own. Thank you very much for your time. Tomorrow we'll be discussing anti-logarithms. Just stop the video wherever you are finding it difficult to follow, and please repeat until unless you are able to clarify all your doubts. Thank you.